So as you're coming into the meeting space, in the chat, if you can introduce yourself, you can include any or all of the following: your name, your role in the community, if you feel comfortable sharing your pronouns, as well as any access needs that you may need during today's session. And we'll give folks a couple of minutes to sign in after a brief break. Thank you for joining us. So we'll give it about 1 more minute before we start the session. Carolyn, I know that, Carla, I know that you're already have introduced yourself in the chat. Take a minute, just take some deep breaths. It's been a long day of learning. All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. And just some accessibility pieces. If you need to access the closed captions, I believe that closed captions is currently under other because we have a lot of options in our Zoom room right now. And thank you for enabling the closed captioning. And to participate in the chat, you already have been able to do that. So choose everyone from the drop down. I won't necessarily be monitoring the chat as frequently during the session, but I do have a moderator here that will be supporting if there are any questions during portions of the section where we're not doing a whole lot of interaction. The majority of our session will be very interactive. And before we start, I always like to do a land acknowledgement. So acknowledging and honoring the Ramaytush, Mi'kmaq, and Ohlone people, as well as all of the original indigenous peoples of the land that I live and work on today. Yalamu is the unceded ancestral land known as the city and county of San Francisco. And one of my goals is to act as a steward for learning and knowledge and continuing to honor the process of our Indigenous folks. You can also find out what land you currently reside on by using this hyperlink. It gives you to nativeland.ca, as well as considering making a donation to the Shumi land tax to recognize and continue the work of the Ohlone tribes that continue to live and thrive in the Bay Area today. So just a quick introduction. So my name is Kristin Vogel-Campbell. My pronouns are she, her, and some of my coworkers and some of my friends call me Dr. KVC. So you can call me that if you wish. My role in the community is I am the coordinator of special education for the San Mateo Foster City School District. I am a career special educator. I have been with the San Mateo Foster City School District for 7 years, and I've been in special education for about 20. I started out as a paraeducator, and a classroom teacher, and I have been a district office support person for the past 8 years. I am also a member of the Community Advisory Board for the San Mateo County Pride Center. I am an author and researcher, so I consider myself a practitioner researcher. And I have a book due out in January about supporting families in the IEP process. I don't have any specific access needs other than sometimes when I'm nervous, I stutter a little bit. So please bear with me if I stumble over my words. So, one of the things that came up during our keynote this morning, I absolutely loved Yomi's keynote, and she talked about this concept of disability justice and how we need to move away from just seeing disability as disability rights. We have laws in place to support students and folks with disabilities, and then that's it. Disability justice is much more than that. It is a movement that is founded and centered on the lived experiences of disabled folks of color. And here in the Bay Area, we have a rich history of disability advocacy and disability justice. So, one of the hyperlinks in the slide deck is the 10 principles of disability justice. These are utilized in the community, and I think that they have a lot of value for applying them to schools. So, that is just an extra resource that I wanted to provide to you. And then we have the amazing advocates that work within disability justice. So these are just some of the many folks that their work is honored and respected. And many of them have podcasts, books, news articles. So definitely please check them out. So Alice Wong, Bay Area native and local. Sins Invalid is a Bay Area, Berkeley-based arts disability organization. And then we have Mia Mingus, who's also Bay Area. Leroy Moore is a Bay Area artist, rapper, and scholar. And Leah Lakshmi Pipienza and Patty Byrne. As well as talking about our ancestors who worked towards disability justice while they were here with us. Stacy Park Milburn, Judy Human, Grace Lee Boggs, and Audre Lorde. And Audre is sometimes considered the mother of disability justice. Towards the end of her life, she wrote a series of essays called the Cancer Journals and what it was like to live with cancer as a debilitating condition. So that is absolutely recommended. As well as some work specifically geared towards how we view disability and critical theory in schools. Understanding the concept of intersectionality and that racism and ableism work interdependently. And this was a concept that Yomi had talked about during her chat this morning. Intersectionality, how disability is usually sometimes forgotten about when we talk about accessibility, equity, and justice. And the supporting all forms of resistance, including the fight for disability rights. So now that I was able to share some of those resources with you, we will get to the meat of what we are here to talk about today. So all of our resources are linked in the digital home base. If you, Myra, if you can put that link in the chat. It is also available in the slide deck as well as on the conference app. And we have 3 session goals today. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at quotes from parents about the barriers that they see in the IEP process and inclusion, and how schools and teams can disrupt models of exclusion. Yomi, in her talk this morning, talked about segregation as violence. Special day classes and special education, where students are pulled out of classroom settings, is the only legally enforced form of segregation in our schools today. We're also going to look at the meeting accessibility protocol that myself and another colleague have put together, and using that to conduct a needs assessment for your individual sites or districts and to determine areas of improvement. And throughout this session, we will also share and thought partner on best practices and elicit input on ideas and possibilities. So I know that we're a relatively small group today, and I will stop sharing for the time being. When was the first, if this applies to you, when was the first time that you felt othered, or when was a time that you have felt othered in your life? And this is also coming from a place of vulnerability and sharing in this space. You can either input in the chat or you can speak up. And you also have the right to pass.
I'll start. I think one of my earliest memories was and I'm sure there were others before that, but one that stands out when you ask that is I'm from Panama, and I grew up on the Canal Zone, and all the kids on the Canal Zone where I lived had to go to, they shut down our schools, and we had to go to schools on the military bases with Americans. And that in itself made us feel othered, because they split us all up and we went to different schools all across the Canal Zone on different military bases. But it was yeah, like that was one event that like made us feel othered, made me feel othered. And then when I finally got to the classroom, it was being one of like two Black girls in the class, and the only Panamanian Black girl in the class. And it felt really, really othering, I would say. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Carla. I can share that one of the things that we all come from different places, and definitely not as outwardly impactful as I think the othering that you experienced. I grew up in a Catholic family, and I went to Catholic school.
Mm-hmm.
One of the pieces of pedagogy that is really interesting in Catholic schools is the punishment of students that use their left hand for writing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there were some pretty not great experiences that I went through where I was taught or told not to use my left hand, um, to the point where when I was in sixth or seventh grade, the principal came in and handed me one of those like chunky pencil grips that you see a lot of times in like kindergarten and first grade. And it was definitely very, very ostracizing. That was the first time that the experience of being a left-handed student, it was othered in the whole setting. Individually, there was a lot of individual shaming and shaming with my family, but especially at that age of like 11 or 12, it was an opportunity for teasing and bullying. So, and I still carry that with me, 30 years later. So it's a difference is the cause for othering.
Yeah.
I guess I'll share. I was really shy as this child. And I can remember in second grade, we had moved a couple times and I was new to the class, and the school I'd come from before was like at a different spot in the reading curriculum. And so the teacher, she was a brand new teacher, I'm sure, so sweet, but just, had me working by myself, basically in isolation at the back of the class. And I was already shy and didn't want any extra attention drawn to me. And so I vividly remember that in second grade, and then ended up having to move classes based on that reading piece and whatever. And then also a teacher in fourth grade when I was really shy. We did self-portraits, and I blush really easily when I'm embarrassed. And he came over and actually like colored on my self-portrait and made these like bright red cheeks that ended up on the wall with everything. And just remember being really like mortified. And I really like art. So not only did he like draw on my art and like change it, but had highlighted that part of me that I was already nervous and didn't like being drawn attention to.
Thank you for sharing that as well. So let me go ahead and share my screen again. So Dr. Bettina Love, she just came out with an amazing book called Punished for Dreaming, about the experience of Black students in public schools, which is not the topic of this session. But this is a short clip about the experience of everyone in public schools during the pandemic, and how it should give us pause to change our practices in a radical way.
You want to go, Bettina? Okay. I love what you got to say. Right.
We already know.
So, I was floored at how when we shut down schools, how so much became possible. So we shut down schools, and in a matter of a month, we're done with standardized testing. Really? We've been fighting for that for decades, and now you're done with standardized testing? Okay, cool. You know what? Every kid get a laptop to go home. But just last week, those laptops, you couldn't take them out. I mean, they were like precious gold. Oh, you know what? Teachers, we need you. We're going to rely on your pedagogy and your ingenuity and your creativity during this time. Oh, so now our profession again. Parents, you're the number one thing we need right now. Oh, we need parents. Oh, tech companies giving out free internet. Oh, you can give out free internet? Now we got millions of, they play their hand, and we have to say, we're not going back. The superintendent of the state of Georgia, the state superintendent came out with this beautiful letter around mid-March, and he said, we want compassion over compliance. I said, wow. He said, we teachers, we want you to be more flexible. You're too rigid. This was in his letter. And all I'm saying is keep that same energy in 2020, 2021, 2022, and so on and so on and so on. Why did it take a pandemic to see the humanity in teaching? Why did it take a pandemic to see how extraordinary this job is? Why did it take a pandemic to see that we needed resources? Why did it take a pandemic for them to say, well, because of the pandemic, the gaps are going to be exacerbated? No shit. So, I think the pandemic has shown us a hand that they were willing to play in crisis that they were never willing to play before. And now we have to say that we're not going back. The managing of inequalities, we're not going back. And we have to be clear about that as educators. That's what abolition is about. To say that what you thought was normal, that was not normal. Expelling kids, killing kids. I mean, we haven't had a school shooting. And that got to a point where it was normal to report on school shootings. It was normal to talk about Black and brown children being expelled. It was normal to have police snatching and hurting and body slamming young girls in classrooms. That became normal. And we have to say enough is enough. And this pandemic has given us an opportunity to say that we're not going back. We got teachers now saying, I'm making curriculum for my students. That's right. You should have been doing that in the first place.
Right.
So we have to now take this moment, and when we do reopen schools, to say that same energy, that same creativity, that same ingenuity, that same trust that you gave parents, that same trust that you gave teachers, we want it back. We're not going back to what we had. But we got to be clear about that, because they played their hand. They played it too soon.
Yeah. And I think we should just drop the mic, you know what I mean? Because I like keep that same energy for her. And it's sort of like you revealed the self. It's the same thing, like the same.
All right. Yeah, just Dr. Love's words are so strong. And I'm concerned that we've lost that energy about the pushback and the compassion over compliance. And we don't need to hear her again, even though it is fantastic. Just for the sake of time, there's a teeny tiny clip here. So Dr. Gloria Ladson-Billings, she is another amazing scholar in school pedagogy and critical race theory. And one of the things that she wrote about in the middle of the pandemic was the need for a hard reset. So it was very much in line with what Dr. Love had said. And let's see if we can just hear her words, because one of my goals is to also uplift the voices of scholars that as practitioners we should be aware of, so that we're sharing them in our schools and districts.
What do you hope educators will hold on to as things that we know work as they prepare to support student learning in the coming year?
So let me give you a little bit of a context, because I've been giving a lot of talks about what I've called the hard reset, or the need for the hard reset.
Mm-hmm.
I've used the analogy of these devices that we all own. And we know when things go really, really bad and you can't find anything help on the internet, you finally make your way back to the Apple store or the Samsung store or LG or wherever you got it.
Mm-hmm.
And they try a few things, but then they come with the dreaded words. We're going to need to do a hard reset.
Mm-hmm.
If they say that to you and you don't have everything backed up, what you're going to get back from them will be a working device that has none of the stuff you had in there before.
Mm-hmm.
Your pictures are gone, your contacts are gone. It's going to be like it was from the factory. And I've been arguing that what needs to happen in our schools is a hard reset. And people don't want to hear that. People keep saying, we just need to get back to normal. Well, going back to normal for the kids that are most vulnerable is not a solution, because normal was where the problem was.
What do you hope educators?
All right. So what resonates with you after listening to Dr. Love and Dr. Ladson-Billings? And how does this connect to your work with families and students?
I just loved hearing that reminder of the not going back and that energy, and how, I mean, she made so many amazing points, but I already do hear people saying, like, we have to let go. We can't keep blaming the pandemic for the gaps that are happening. We can't keep blaming for challenging behaviors. And I'm always like, what are you talking about right now? That's 100% still what's happening. Kids didn't just change overnight. Like, if they lived in the pandemic from 0 to 4, then yeah, they look like a giant toddler entering our kinder programs. And that is a result of the pandemic and the way our testing scores are. Or personally, my kids are in middle school. They're very young middle schoolers because they were at home from 2nd through 4th grade and they missed, you know, some of that peer interaction time. And I love it. I'll take them innocent as long as I can. But there certainly has been an impact. So, but I feel like I'm hearing that, like, at the county level, at the district levels, like, that can't be an excuse. Teachers want that to be an excuse, or families want that to be an excuse. And I don't know, just hearing her reminds me of like, that was real and probably we could learn from it. So that was what I took away.
I was so hopeful, you know, while we were in Zoom school, and then when we came back, I was in San Francisco at the time, and we came back in April, and I was so hopeful, even the following school year, and you know, I was a site principal at the time, and I knew that school had to change for our students. I was a principal of a newcomer elementary school in San Francisco, and the inequities, I mean, the gap just got even larger, right? And then the inequities that my students suffered during Zoom school, because they didn't have all the access that others had. And I mean, I actually got in big fat trouble with my boss for telling him that I needed to get laptops for my students, and he was like, no, you don't need that. Oh, that was like a whole equity thing that I just blew up on. But in coming back now and being back for a while, it feels like people want to go back, like people want to go backwards, right? And it's like our students are so different now, and the impact that it's had on teachers, it's like teachers were finally seen as professionals, and you know, people were looking to them to be like, okay, well, what are we going to do? They're the ones that figured out the whole Zoom school stuff. Principals and teachers were the ones that figured it out. And now it's like there's all this, you know, the power grabbing again of like, nope, you can't make that decision. Nope, you can't do that. And I feel like things are reverting. And as far as like for families, it's like families had to be there to teach their kids. They were the teachers at home. It was a teacher that doing Zoom school facilitating, but parents were there for the rest of the day. And the value and the development of the closeness of relationships, a different type of relationships between students, the kids and their families and the teacher and the school, like that was so beautiful and was really taken for granted. Oh,
One of the things that I heard from both of you is just during that time, whose knowledge was valued and honored and centered shifted. And now, you know, that shift is heading back where, you know, teachers and even, you know, school leaders and district leaders, we don't have the autonomy that we had during the pandemic. But then we also have to think of through the lens of the parents. They had a lot that their knowledge was honored, their experience and, you know, the work that they put in, you know, was thanked all the time, and parents were listened to. And we have gone back and kind of reverted to the power imbalance that exists between schools and families. And that's the piece that I'm most concerned about, is that, you know, we had a chance. And I think that, you know, we have to grasp every opportunity we can to get back to where we were a little bit during that time, but also making sure that it's available to everybody.
Yeah.
Because, you know, that digital divide in a ways was widened, like you had said, Carla, during the pandemic. So, you know, again, another scholar that Did I completely just got bounced off?
Yeah, you glitched
Sorry
a little
about,
bit.
sorry
Okay,
about
no
that.
worries.
All right, let's see. And you all can see my screen, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So another scholar that I always like to highlight and center is Bell Hooks. And her words here are just, they're so vital and important to the work that we do with teachers, with families, with parents, with the community. And it's the power of dialogue. Um, being one of the simplest ways that we can begin as teachers, scholars, and critical thinkers to cross the boundaries and the barriers that may or not be erected by race, gender, class, professional standing, and a host of other differences. So she's kind of talking about intersectionality without specifically naming intersectionality. And that's why, she's really seen as one of the, you know, grandmothers of critical theory and critical race theory, and especially how do we apply it in schools. And expanding whose knowledge is deemed legitimate. I've been in a couple of other talks today where we've talked about familial knowledge and understanding the funds of knowledge that students come in to our schools with, that they're not just coming in as like empty vessels, that they're coming in with a whole array of experiences and everything. And at the same time, honoring the knowledge of participants, of families, of parents, extended families, multi-generational families. I've had many an IEP meeting with families where the parent is there, the grandmother is there, as well as a cousin and a tío. And all of their input is valued. And a parent brings their community with them for a very specific reason, because they're all raising a child. So I wanted to share some quotes from research that I conducted in November and December of 2021 with students, families of students who receive special ed services. And the families were representative of the student population in my school district. And just kind of hearing about how they feel decentered in the process in special education, and then the, okay, now what? So we're tasked with ensuring that the meeting space is safe and supported so that families feel comfortable and that their opinions and their voices are honored and respected. And from my experience, that doesn't happen across the board. When we go into schools where there's a lot of privilege, parents have the agency to speak up. And in some schools where we have families who don't have English as their home language, who might be undocumented, who might have had untraditional schooling themselves, who are coming as refugees, they don't feel that they are an equal partner. And the school does not set up as if they should be treated as equal partners, and that's not right. But we need to redefine and expand whose knowledge is valued and important. So not all of the conversations that I had with families were negative, but each of the conversations and dialogues that I engaged in with families highlighted a lot of barriers and things that prevented families from feeling like they were equal partners in special education. And these were just 4 of the quotes that I've pulled. So we're just going to read these, kind of take them in, and then we're going to do a quick Jamboard activity. So the first quote was from a father who talked about he and his wife coming into an IEP meeting. And he said, it's the 2 of us versus the 9 of them sort of thing. That he felt that the IEP meeting was adversarial and that it was an us versus them binary. And another father also said, whatever the authority will tell us, we will just follow. We're not very vocal. We don't know how the system works because we're immigrants, basically. A third parent who talked about becoming knowledgeable about the IEP process, she had said, I'm always on my guard now because I feel like school is waiting for me to slip. Are we adversaries? Are we really working together? I don't know. And then to end on a slightly more positive note, my fourth quote was from a mother who said, but don't give up. I haven't give up. Sometimes you have to be brave enough to confront the problem that you see. So take a couple minutes, just process those. I've been experiencing these quotes for almost 2 years at this point. But it's really heavy to hear when parents feel that they're in a safe space, what they really experience when they're in a school setting. So what we're going to do is, if we can put the Jamboard link in the chat, we're going to take about 5 minutes or so. Select one of the parent quotes that moves you to document your thoughts. So focus on these 2 questions. So how do schools perpetuate the decentering of familial knowledge? And how can we perform that hard reset to build bridges towards parents, students, and families? So maybe it's a practice that's going on at your school, or something that you're trying to implement at the county level, or something that you heard about in one of the other sessions today. So let's take about 5 minutes. I'll set my timer. Is the Jamboard link working?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So, and there should be 4 different slides on the Jamboard, and there's a quote at the top of each of them. So I'm going to stop sharing. And even though I've interacted with these quotes for quite some time, I still, new things come out for me. So I'm also going to participate in the Jamboard. I'm going to put about 5 minutes on the timer, and then we can come back. Since it's just a small group, we're not going to necessarily do breakout rooms. And maybe we can just look at the other responses and kind of just silently reflect. And if there was any pieces of discussion, we can come back. Just about. So we took about 5 minutes. Thank you for participating in that. And yeah, it doesn't get old, feeling kind of that impact of reading and taking in some of those parent quotes. And I think we're all on a very similar page with what we heard and how we felt. Carla or Lauren, did you want to elaborate on any of your responses, or was there something that you couldn't necessarily put into written word?
The response for was it the second quote? It always, like I've always worked with immigrant families, and so I lost you on my screen. I can't find you. But one thing that I know is that, immigrant families come and they are very trusting, right, of the system. They're trusting that the school will take care of their child. And that's not always the case. And I remember, I'm a parent too, and I'm moving here to this country and feeling that way. It's like, oh, yeah. And I think that the people in the system recognizing that is really important. It's not that immigrant parents are giving up their role as the parent or the advocate, but that's culturally where they're coming from. Are you still here? Am I still there? I don't know.
Yes, yes.
I can't find you. I don't know
Oh
where you.
no.
I got a million tabs open and I have this Zoom button that's up and I can't find it. I can't find. Oh, here we go. It's because you
Okay.
got small. The window got really tiny.
Okay. You're
Okay.
back?
I see the little Zoom thing, but am I still there? Oh, this is annoying. But go ahead. I'll try to. I'll figure it out.
You're okay. Yeah, and again, thank you for sharing. And I think it's really for families that are coming in, and I think I don't know which one of you had said it. What I did notice on one of the jam boards that the two of us versus the nine of them sort of thing. There was a response, coming in without a village behind you.
Mm.
And the power difference and the power differential, and like that is not the environment that we want to set up at all, because we're legally obligated to elicit parent input. And there's a marked difference between parent participation and parent engagement. Participation is, bring brownies to the bake sale, or, serving as like a classroom volunteer. Engagement is being on a DLAC or an ELAC committee, coming in, sharing, speaking your mind. And it's an active verb.
Mhm.
So yeah, so sharing my screen again, this is where my colleagues and I, where my colleagues and I are going with the possibility piece. And the pre-K-12 school meeting protocol. Let me put I'll just put it here, and I'll just grab the link for you in the chat.
I'm back.
Oh, great. We've got you. Okay. So the link to the protocol is in the chat. And this is a tool that you can use at your school site or at your, district level, or even county, even something that you can use, even if you're not working directly with parents, how to make our meetings truly accessible. And so this was a document that we put together after reviewing the data, the qualitative data that we had received from parent empathetic interviews about what are things that the school can do to make the meeting space more inviting and welcoming. And what do you need in order to feel like you are on an equal playing ground with the school-based members of the IEP team? So we came up with a 20-point checklist. And when we define accessibility, we define it as physical accessibility, language accessibility, neurodiversity accessibility, as well as gender affirming accessibility. And so these four definitions together make up the 20 points in our protocol. And what we ask teams to do is to rate themselves from a 1 to a 20. And then after that, think about what the easy quick fixes are. And when I mean quick fix, things that don't require money.
Mm-hmm.
And then what are the things that we need to plan for long term? And that is something that you can put in your your SIPSA or work with your district team to put this in your LCAP. So I know that some of our school sites are writing in changing the conference table in the conference room so that it's a circular table as opposed to a rectangular table. There's no one at the edge, there's no one at the corner, and everyone has line of sight to each other. And another piece that is coming into a lot of the schools that I'm working with is that we're working on dimming lights as opposed to lights that are just on and off. There's a lot of tech pieces that are also greater level district-wide technology plan. So in the chat is the protocol, and what I had envisioned was having folks work either independently or in teams to go through the protocol as it applies to their site or their district, and to rate themselves on a scale of that 1 to 20, and then to look at those reflection questions. But Carla, since it appears that it is just you and I at this point, I want to invite you to let me know what works best for you. If this is something that you would want to work on independently, or if you wanted to review the protocol together, I'm more than happy to do either of those.
Well, I'm not at a school site, so I think I would love to go through it with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So here we go. So step 1 in the protocol, the entryway to the meeting space is wide enough to accommodate a wheelchair. The meeting room table can be adjusted to meet various levels of seating. So like a standing table that can be transitioned down. Meeting table is round.
Yeah, definitely.
And then every seat around the table has line of sight to all other seats. So this was one of the things that came up, especially when we have large meetings, when folks have to bring in folding chairs and they're sitting in the group, but they're kind of not, because the table can't accommodate everybody. You're not able to make eye contact with everyone.
Yeah.
Parents have a choice where they sit. Many times parents come in and all of the school-based team members are already seated, and they maybe have 1 or 2 choices. Maybe parents prefer to have their back towards the window or closer to the door if they need to, take a break. Maybe they like being in the center of the table. It really, really depends. And then there's a screen and a speaker in the room for virtual attendees participation. So we have some of these hybrid meetings, which are great. I'm not a fan of a hybrid meeting, because if the facilitator is in person, the virtual participants are usually not given as much airtime. And there are times when I'm the virtual facilitator, sometimes I don't see or recognize, or I can't view all of the participants in the physical meeting space. I'd rather do away with hybrid meetings, but that's not on me. And then for parents that prefer to call in, there's a phone with adequate speaker that can be placed in the center of the table so that everyone can hear what someone is saying. The lights in the room have dimming controls, as well as fan and AC or heat in the room. There's nothing more uncomfortable than sitting in a room that's 80 degrees. And then the language accessibility portions, materials translated into the dominant language of the parents prior to the meeting. Interpreters have been trained on special ed language and verbiage, which is one of the biggest barriers that I see at a district level, especially when we do like on-call or on-demand translation. They don't have the technical terms. it's really difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you, I know in San Francisco, like we had district translators that they were
Mhm.
with all the terms. I don't know if other districts have like their core, a group of core translators, or if they for like get it from another agency.
Yeah, I know in our district we have, I think, about a dozen interpreters that are employed directly by our district. But, as you know, like we have 22 schools. So if there are a handful of IEPs happening at a variety of sites, and then other meetings or interpreters are utilized, sometimes we don't have enough interpreters to go
Yeah.
around.
Yeah.
When we have IEPs during parent-teacher conferences, we don't get the interpreter. So there are times when we have to dial into a contracted agency, and it is never ideal to deal with that. And there have been times where I've like asked to reschedule the meeting because the interpreter doesn't have that background. But I know that, San Francisco kind of is the exemplar with the number of interpreters that they have available.
That's one thing that they're an exemplar in.
Exactly. You know what? Let's highlight something.
They got something.
Yeah. And then the other thing that I find most important is, especially when we have an interpreter, a lot of times the school staff will talk to the interpreter and they're not making eye contact with the parent. And that is just the parents have said that they feel completely left out of the process.
Yeah. Yes.
So yeah, I think it's a natural instinct to look at the person that you're speaking to. But it's very similar when we have sign language interpretation, that we should be making eye contact with the person, with the deaf person.
Yeah.
And then giving parents an opportunity to ask questions or clarification. So, there are times when I go in and I tally our teachers or related service providers stopping and pausing and then asking, as opposed to just like rushing through, a 45-minute assessment without stopping. Like we can't expect parents to be able to take all of that in. And most of our school staff can't do it either. And then flexibility for meetings that fit into their work schedule. Parents provided with draft documents before meetings, having input in the creation of agendas, and provided opportunities to provide input throughout the meeting. And then finally, all participants are recognized by their preferred pronouns and name. So those were the 20 points that we felt were the most salient. There were other pieces, but we didn't want to make this an accessibility protocol that wasn't accessible to school staff.
Yeah.
And then that step 2, once you would go through with your team, defining the strengths and weaknesses of the team's current level of accessibility. So in San Francisco, they would say, we have trained interpreters that are knowledgeable about special education terms. And that's great. And, some of our school sites, we make eye contact with parents during when we're speaking to them. And then what are the easy fixes that can be implemented without monetary resources? And then what adjustments require financial commitment? So it's a long-term planning document that we don't expect teams to make all of the fixes right then and there, but to make an action plan to make measurable steps to rectify some of the things that require some, monetary pieces.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
They're good things to be thinking about for holding any meeting with families.
Yeah. And then in your capacity, I know that you're at the county office and you said you're a coordinator. In like what are you more like ed services or student services at the county?
I'm in
And do you
curriculum,
do interactions with parents? Okay.
not yet, curriculum and instruction, and the position is new. It's I'm the language and literacy coordinator, and I'm hoping that, and I think that a parent component is going to fall under my umbrella. So, but we're still trying to figure out, it's brand new, and they're still trying to figure out like where I fit in. It's more like there are a lot of EL services that and multilingual services that I'll be doing in charge of, but I think that there's also that parent component that often gets left out. And it's like, you can't leave that piece out. It's like parents are the teacher. And so I mean, I feel really strongly about that. So supporting parents and providing them with the tools that they need to then be able to support and advocate for their child's is kind of like where I'm seeing parts of my role.
Has the county thought about doing kind of like almost like a CLAC type of thing? Like I
don't know yet. I don't know. I don't know.
It's a new position.
I'm finishing up this is my third week. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. It is brand new.
Yeah. Brand new. Yeah. Yeah. I started on October 2nd. So I'm just
my gosh,
learning.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. That's so exciting. And it's absolutely needed. And I know that in my district, I do a lot of work with multilingual services on the dual identified piece, and using the different pathways to reclassify our students because of the inequities that exist with, if you have special ed services and you receive ELD, you don't generally have an elective, and that's one of the things that is just, it does not sit right with me at all.
No, it's like, well, why would kids want to go to school? A lot of them go to school just because of those electives, and if they don't get that, then, on their part, it's like, well, what's the point? And we don't want that. We don't want that. We want them to love their time there.
Yeah. I guess, since it was a small group and then it fell to an even smaller group, that one piece with the assessment protocol was to take up the majority of the remainder of the time. And then we were going to leave the rest of the time just for questions. So I don't know if you have any questions for me, or if you wanted to chat more, or if you had other things that you needed to do, it's completely up to you.
I mean, I don't really have any other questions. I mean, I really enjoyed the presentation and the link back to, we had this opportunity. We had this opportunity, and I feel like a lot of it has been squandered. Not that we can't reset, but and continue forward, but I do feel that schools, school districts, county, just the whole field of education, it's like an opportunity that was just squandered.
Let me give you my district email so that we can continue to connect as well, because as you get more and more into your role and kind of get a feel for it, I'm sure you'll be meeting some of my colleagues in multilingual services at our district. And sometimes I get roped into those.
Okay, Vogel-Campbell. Okay, and what is your?
Yeah, it's much easier. It's just my my maiden name.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's just K Vogel.
Vogel. Yeah, I know that San Mateo County still has the .K12. I have a friend that works there. Actually, a couple friends that work in the district.
Okay.
Victor Tam.
Oh, I love Victor.
And Angie Estanina is she and I were teachers together. We've known each other forever. We were teachers together, we were multilingual together. We were principals at the same time. And then she moved
Yeah.
to
Yeah, she's wonderful as well. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, Kristin, thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Yeah, it was good meeting you, Carla.
Good to meet you too. You take care.